I think it would be great to begin with some breathing, a little grounding before we dive in. So just invite you to perhaps close your eyes if you feel like it, and take a few deep breaths, a really slow, deep breath in and a deep breath out. And continue taking these breaths, feeling into your body. And I would like to share some wisdom. I just heard from Aviva Chernik on Rosh Hashanah. She was talking about the breath as tshuva, which I really love. And with each inhale is a return. So as you breathe, kind of imagine each breath in as a return to yourself, a return to your body, and a return to the present moment. And then with each exhale, you're kind of letting it out and then returning it back in. So continue taking a few more deep breaths and really feel that return into yourself, into the present moment. And we'll kind of just sit with that quietly. I think it's good to begin with a little quiet before the conversation happens. As we breathe, I want to share a quote that's been coming up a few different places lately from Simone Weil, who said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." So in our breathing, we're paying attention, but in our work, we also requires a lot of attention. And we're going to give some attention today to areas that we need to breathe into and give a little space to. So if you're feeling ready, you can take a last deep breath, one last return, and open your eyes. And put that in the chat.
Just to center a little bit in the middle of the morning, little pause in the middle of the day.
A Monday morning when, especially after the holiday, it's definitely needed.
For sure.
Okay, so nice to be here with both of you. For today, I'm wondering if you had a chance to look at those different topics that I outlined, I'm wondering if there's any that is kind of calling to you as more pressing for you to talk about today, because we can start with that. And we can also now or later sort of map out kind of order of what you think would be helpful to talk about. We can begin with the self. We can begin with like more specific issues that might be burning for you right now. But I want to leave it up to you on where to begin, where you feel that attention's needed. So just to recap, I mentioned building support systems. Particularly, I'm thinking about something that you said last time, Michael, about a lot of the time I feel like I'm on an island when I practice. That really struck me and it stayed with me. And I think that's a really important space to explore. And then there's self-care and replenishment. And Aviad, you shared a bit about your journey with that, learning how to do that. There's institutional challenges and systemic limitations, and then patient challenges, which, there's the frustration and burnout that you can feel. And then Michael, you mentioned like triumphs and successes. I think that's really important to highlight as well. And where we envision developing in the future versus reality at the present. And really anything, other stressors or burdens that might be something you're dealing with. Anything jumping out to you?
I'm kind of open to following your lead. I don't know, Aviad, if there's something specific that you wanted to start with.
Again, nothing specific. I'm definitely like, the ones that are more up upfront right now. Maybe there's always the self-care in terms of managing your own health, your own stress, personal life, family life, work life, patients, emailing, um, in the nighttime and over the weekend, and trying to create that balance. And then there is there's a particular patient situation right now going on that maybe happens once every 5-10 years, kind of where it's actually like stressing the whole clinic. The patient, is they may not realize how much you're doing for them, but they're acting in a way that's stressing the whole clinic, all different staff members. But you're really doing a lot for them, but they don't see it in a way. And that's kind of creating that. How do you balance that in the clinical practice to support everyone? So those are two topics that might maybe we can discuss.
I
Mhm.
think it's a good start for sure.
Yeah.
So Lisa, I'll let you. Yeah, which one calls you, or what do you want to guide us to?
Um, hmm. Why don't we begin with that more specific issue, and then we can, if we have time, we can broaden things out to the self-care, and one might emerge from the other.
Okay, you mean the one with the patient I was just talking about, that one?
Yeah, unless you think that would be more helpful to talk about in a bigger group where I might not be able to provide much problem.
Well,
But
it's
it's also
more just
space to, if there's something that is a current issue, just to have that space to talk about it out loud.
yeah, it's more or less under control. We had sort of the experience of it in the last few months, but it's kind of and talk about it. If Michael hasn't experienced this as well, probably maybe he'll have some thoughts.
Yeah.
But in case other doctors or practitioners are experienced as well, probably happens once every 5-10 years. As I said, I probably maybe had like 2 or 3 patients like this ever, maybe this to this level. But it's when you have your own practice and you're working with other practitioners, staff members, you need to, and you have patients, you need to, obviously patients, come first in terms of patient care. But at the same time, you have to be careful. Some patients cross boundaries that they shouldn't with staff, and there could be almost like a bit of an abusive situation where they're abusing the staff, almost like it's just a fine line. The staff is getting really, really stressed, and you're doing everything you can to kind of help that patient because you want to, but they're also not respecting the situation as much. And um, and yeah, so that was the first time I think in a long time that I sort of felt a lot more stressed, like just trying to balance that fine line. Um, at the same time, it could be like the patient's really sick, they're not feeling well. Um, they've seen many doctors, they've seen lots of doctors, and they've actually been fired by all these doctors too. That they're not allowed to go back to them. So other clinics have fired them for this exact same reason. And you're like, okay, well, my turn now. That's really coming to my clinic. Can I be different? Can I help them out? Can I approach this a different way? And the way that they complain about all the other doctors, and you see what they've done, and you see it's a personality issue in terms of how they just they push themselves out of clinics by that. So doctors don't want to work with them because they're scared to work with them. It's stressful to the staff. It's also stressful for the clinic. Is there going to be are they going to file a complaint, like an unrealistic complaint to the board, get some paperwork started? That's like nothing's going to happen except headache. And it's just you're just kind of watching it for like week after week, month after month, and the staff is saying, well, you should fire them as a patient because we always hear about them, but you always hear about that how do you fire a patient? And you really don't want to, because you're like, no, you want to help them, and if you fire them, it might go bad, might go good, but you have to refer them out to somebody else. But it's just going to continue this cycle where another clinic is not going to get hit with that, and maybe you can help. So yeah, so that's been going on for the last few months. It's a lot better now because I kind of just kind of pushed through it. But I understood that my staff, they weren't really getting abused. They were just frustrated. They really did not like working with that person. But there was no abuse. But they kept telling me like, okay, we don't want to work with that person. So I took on more of that. I dealt with that person more. I kept them isolated from that patient. So I did a lot of emails, a lot of calls, all this stuff, just to kind of keep everything apart so that my staff doesn't have to deal with it. And then eventually you can just do it.
That's a lot of extra work for you.
Yeah. So it's just like, just doing all of that management, like once, twice, 3 times a week, just kind of like dealing with stuff. And just trying to like protect the clinic, protect myself, protect the patient, but also offering care, and then knowing that like the patient may not, like they're not going to get better from this their approach. It looks like they won't, and um then and this is a proper practice, so they're spending money. So I'm trying really hard not to get them to spend too much money. I'm just doing very minimal. The problem is also doing very minimal doesn't result in treatments that get better. But if you do more, you see the same thing. They've done a lot more at other clinics, a lot more, spend a lot more money, and they didn't get better. So it's like, I don't want to continue that cycle of them spending money unnecessarily if I don't think I can help them at the end of the day. So it's kind of like, but I do want to help them. So I'm just doing as much as I can, maybe we can make a little dent in it, and improve things in the right direction. So yeah, so that's one of my more stressful clinic operational experiences with more of a difficult patient situation. Just yeah, but really haven't had that for like 15 years of practice. So that was kind of interesting to see to that level. I don't know, Michael, have you had something like this recently or in the last many years? How many years have you been in practice for?
Yeah, I know I'm like plus 15 years now, which doesn't seem that long when I talk to my dad, who's been working for like plus 40 years. But in some ways I feel very experienced, and in other ways I still feel like I just got out of school and I blink my eyes and here I am. So yeah, there's a little bit of both in terms of the years. Yeah, so that your points touch really close to home. It's a reasonably, regular issue for me, I'll be honest. And some of the things I'm going to say may sound stereotypical. It's not stereotypical. It's more experiential. Like it's what I've been experiencing. When I like reflect on, and when I have reflected on the like legal challenges and college complaints, like regulatory challenges that I've had, it's pretty much always been either like a labor issue, like a staff member, or it's been a patient from I don't know what the right term is, but someone who like is struggling financially and often with their health, and often with like a more severe chronic health issue that ends up becoming like an issue for me. And what I mean by an issue is someone that, complains to my regulatory college, or will sue me. And it's like, I don't think I've had a case where it hasn't been someone that I've given like a significant discount to and has poured like a lot of resources into, from a staff perspective, from a emotional investment perspective, from even just doing the work at like a dramatic discount. And it's not that all of these patients become issues or problems, because that's not true. But when I reflect on the patients that have become issues or problems, it's always from this patient base. And I can like go through them, but I had a lady years ago who was like, in really dire straits, and she was someone that was living with the MCS and EMS, and she was on the streets in Rochester, and she somehow found me. She ended up coming to Toronto, and like I did all this work for her. And while she was in Toronto, she was staying at a hostel. It was like a very challenging situation just to even manage the dental with the visits, and I was doing it all pro bono. And then she turned around and she sued me. And listen, everyone deserves their day in court and their day to defend their rights, but it really seemed like in this situation, it was, an opportunity to try to get something from someone. And it became like very challenging, and a lot of time and emotion and money, and like, some regret on my part, because I was just trying to help someone out. And if I would have stayed out of it, then I would have had no issues, and there was like no financial gain or much else for it. And I've had a few situations like that. Like I just actually sadly had to dismiss a patient. They again, like it was just one of these stories, and my radar is up now. And so it was Friday night, Friday late afternoon, and I got a text message from someone, and it was a little bit bizarre, saying, help me, I'm ex-patient of yours. I'm sitting in emergency at the hospital. I'm in a lot of dental pain, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote them back saying, who is this? What's going on? I'm happy to try to help. And the messaging back and forth wasn't clear. Like they weren't giving their name. And I tried to call, and they weren't answering the phone. And then eventually I wrote them back saying, this is just kind of strange. Like, I'm happy to communicate with you, but I need some information. What's your name? I need to speak to you on the phone, like to try to understand what's going on. I didn't hear back from them. I heard back from them like at the end of the weekend. And anyways, this turned into a thing where the person, for some reasons, didn't want to disclose their name or their information. They weren't an old patient of mine, but they had been to my old clinic. And there were some financial issues, some housing stability issues. And I said, you know what, like, I'll help you out. I offered to do some services at no charge. And my equation was, I feel really fortunate to be in a profession where I make a good living. I have a stable roof over my head. And, if it's an hour here or an hour there to help someone that is more disadvantaged, like I don't mind doing that. And it just turned into a nightmare. Like they were going around to other offices and complaining about me, and lawyers got involved and threats got involved, and I didn't even do any work on them. It just was all preliminary. And I said to them on the phone, like at one point I was talking to them, I said, my radar's up. I'm really concerned about this. I want to help you, but I feel like this isn't going in the right direction, and I don't want this to become an issue for me. And kind of my personal circle, my partner and people that I confide in, were saying, like, just don't even get involved, like don't, and then so there's that on one side, where it's not worth it for me to get involved, like. And then on the other side, you have someone that you want to help, and I don't want to shut people out because of these risks. Like I don't want to have that mindset where, oh, this person's coming in, they seem a little bit off, I'll just refer them down the road, like what you're saying, Abia. Like I'm just kicking the problem to somebody else. And the whole idea is to try to help someone. And I feel like something that I am somewhat good at is, like, I do have, I like, not that can put myself in someone's shoes, but like when someone comes in that is in maybe like a different socioeconomic situation, or maybe someone that's on the street, or maybe someone that has a history of drug abuse, like I feel like they feel a little more comfortable in my chair than they do in maybe, another dentist chair. And there's like a bit of a rapport that I'm able to develop. And I feel like I'm able to, try to like just be a bit patient and see the person through the image. But it's, like, I know doing it that it's a pain in the ass, and it's like likely going to bite me in the ass, and it's a lot of drain on the admin staff. And then sometimes it becomes like a bigger issue, and it's like, is it worth it? So a part of the challenge for me is, one, like my dream would be to almost be able to write to the regulatory college saying, listen, like I'm dealing with this subset of patients, understand that, so that when someone lodges a complaint, like take a deep breath, and like I had a situation, I'm kind of going on and on here, but I'll just close like with another story. Like I had this guy who was clearly not mentally stable, but the guy needed dental work, right? So like he comes in, and I had a back and forth with him. We built a good rapport. I did the work on him. And he freaked out, and he must have called me like 75 times in 2 days. I'm not exaggerating. And he lodged a complaint to the college. It was like a 2-line complaint to the regulatory college. And then he proceeded to write 14 letters to the regulatory college, taking the complaint back, wants to be my patient still, all of these things. And I said, I can't take you back. Like, my health lawyers advised me, like, I can't do it. Like, it's in proceedings, like, it's not appropriate. And I had to go through this whole investigation with the college, and I was exonerated. Like, it was fine, but it's the emotional, cost. It's the financial cost of going through the whole thing. And then it's also like their response, where there is the lack of ability to differentiate between someone who maybe isn't 100% balanced, is lodging a complaint, rescinding it like over and over and over, like the letters, the volumes of letters. And I get that they have to do their due diligence, but it kind of sours me into taking on the next person. And that's really what it's about for me is like right now I'm working as an associate in an office, and they were not too pleased with this last situation that happened with this person that had contacted me, that from the hospital, this person that didn't want to give their name. And I get it, like, it created a huge issue at the office, and from their perspective, they're a business, they don't need it. For them, it's like, just stick to the regular patient population, and bill normally, don't give discounts, and avoid all of this hassle. And we can put our administrative efforts into helping the people that are paying customers. I don't want to have that mentality. I've never had that mentality, but the other side of it is that you kind of get jaded and a little more cautious about it.
Mhm. Oh, thank you both for sharing. That sounds like almost this impossible challenge of your job is to help people, but then you encounter people who are making it very difficult to be helped and are not helping themselves, and are in fact making things much worse for everybody, and really taking a toll on multiple levels, like you were saying, financial, emotional, affecting, the entire system, including staff. And even if, it sounds like more frequent for you, Michael, but Aviad, even if it's once every 10, 15 years, I'm sure there are milder versions of that occur, where you're dealing with a population that has specific challenges, and there are a lot that raises a lot of big questions, like you're saying, of when you help, when you put limits on what you can do for someone, and when you say no, when you don't get involved, and you can't always know at the start how it's going to go. You can kind of have a sense, but you want to give the opportunity to help people. That's the essence of your work. Both of you is healing, and you never want to turn someone away who is in need of healing, but you also have to, this is where the self-care is coming in. It's self-care, not just for yourself, but also for staff and people you work with, and your, to an extent, like your career. If people are doing things like going to the regulatory committee and lodging complaints, those are serious things that you have to consider. So yeah, there's so many bigger questions here that you're both raising that, we can come back to, and are I don't have answers for, but I'm wondering, first of all, whether you can do something like refer counseling or other social services, and whether you do that, and that's, and wondering how that would work within the WEC kind of network. Because there are, when you're dealing with these kinds of situations, there are real limitations to what you can do in terms of offering help, and then recognizing, maybe outlining in some way for yourselves, well, at what point, like what actually mapping out, like what are the points at which we say we can no longer work with this person, we cannot help them, it's not actually helping them, and what are the steps that you can then take to dismiss a patient, and then how do you deal with your own, emotions related to that, because that must cause its own feelings, about not being able to help someone, and also those feelings of frustration and burnout with a patient, which seem very real. And then I'm also wondering if there are, Michael, you mentioned, like I want to write to the regulatory committee. Like what would happen if you did something like that, or if is there ways to raise more awareness about the particular challenges of the populations you're working with who pose these issues for your own practices, that in some way you can actually raise more awareness and take those steps? Would that do
Yeah, so, I'll be honest, like I think for this space like listen, all of that I would love to explore. You're hitting all the points. But I think the thing that like I'd be most interested in exploring today is kind of more the not as practical stuff, but more like how do we deal with that, like the emotions after, like I've kind of used the word guilt, or when do I know when it's like right to cut off the patient, because I feel bad. And there's, it's like, how much time is appropriate to give of my own time? How many, free consults, how much free time, should I be giving up? When do you cut it off? Like in this situation in particular, it was a mother and son. The son was in his early 20s. And it seemed to me, at least, that it was more like the mom that was the stumbling block. And the mom was, for whatever reason, like, very challenging to like make decisions with and to reason with. And it just seemed like we would come to a conclusion, and then half a day later, it would be like that conversation never happened. And like a whole new set of criteria or expectations would come out and be like, hold on one second, we just talked about this and agreed. Like, it's a pretty basic thing. Like the kid needed his wisdom teeth out. She was trying to lay blame on me and these other practitioners. She had never saw me. She had been in my clinic, and then she saw other practitioners over the last 5 years, and she was trying to blame all of us for him needing his wisdom teeth out. And I kind of thought that it was just that, they're half on the street, they don't have any money, and he needs his wisdom teeth out, and she's trying to find a way to do it. And so my equation was like, it's an hour for me to take out the kid's wisdom teeth. What, I'll just do it. And then he's done and he's out of pain, and like, and that's really what he needs. And unfortunately in Toronto, like you can't really get your wisdom teeth out unless you're willing to pay for it. You'll just get antibiotics, and maybe you'll find some surgeon at a hospital at some point that will do it, but they had already been rejected from Mount Sinai, I think, because of a personality clash. And so I was pretty much offering to do it for free, and it still became an issue. I never did, thank God, I never actually did it, because I think it would have turned it into an even bigger issue. But they basically took my offer and then wanted to go to a specialist. And I was like, okay, like go ahead. Then they wanted me to pay for the specialist. And I was like, why should I pay for the specialist? Like, I'm offering to take out your 2 lower wisdom teeth at no charge. Like, I don't owe you anything. Like, I don't even know their real name. Like, I'm just trying to help the kid out. And they went around to a bunch of different offices and were like complaining about me at these offices and writing like aggressive letters to those offices. Then they were calling me, and like I was just trying to help this kid out. So a few times during this process, I was like, what am I doing? Like, forget it. Like, I don't need this at all. Like this, they just contacted me on a random night. Like, I don't even know how they got my contact information. And then on the other hand, like, it's just an hour, and like, big deal. They come in at the end of the day, I have to pay for I'll pay for the assistant out of pocket. It's $30 and I'll take out the kid's wisdom teeth. And then like, he will be able to function better. He won't need to be on antibiotics every 6 months. He won't have this ongoing pain, like, maybe it's something that's holding him back from, being able to focus, being able to get a job, like all of those things. Like when someone's on the street, and he's not a drug user, he had an abusive situation with the family, and he had to leave his house. Like there's layers to this, right? So I probably let it go on too long, because I felt bad and I wanted to help the kid. And he is not like a kid, he's in his 20s, but still, I wanted to try to help him out. And even when I sent like the final letter being like, I cannot see you, I'm referring you on, these are the 3 referrals, like, follow kind of the book, with a lawyer. I still felt bad, and I still like, and I didn't want to leave the window open. Like it was done, it was over. But at the same time, like I still want, and this is just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And I just
You
also still like,
about it while you're going through, other than a lawyer?
yeah, I
Anyone?
mean, I talked to Loren about it. Just some people at work, like not really. It's kind of all happening so fast. Like a part of it is that like I'm also, just living my life, right? And I try to keep that in mind with patients. Like I'm living my life, but like they're having this acute emergency or they're having this thing that's going on. And I know how I feel when I have something and I need to reach a practitioner, or I want to know, like I want help with something. So I try to keep that in mind with my patients. But yeah, you're just like, Aviad, I'm sure you can second this. You're just trying to juggle life, and then this extra thing is kind of added on top. And you want to make sure you give it enough attention because it's important. And you don't want to mess up. You don't want to just like flippantly send like an email or a text message that, isn't thought out because it can be used against you. At the same time, it's hard to balance it. So no, I didn't really speak to anybody. And these things, like they stay with me to a degree. Like I can, easily at the top of my mind come up with like numerous incidents. I find it happens to me like every couple of years, every 2, 3 years, if not more often, where something comes up that I have.
Well, it sounds like you went above and beyond to do what you could. And if they're not willing to take that help, I mean, I understand the guilt and the over not being able to help someone and not having that be received. But it does sound like you did what you could. And I was asking about if you'd spoken to anyone, because I wonder, like in that situation where you are already juggling so much, like if it would be helpful to talk to someone, like work through a situation like that in the moment, and also like the emotions, and have some outside voices giving you, validation about your course of action, or saying like, oh no, actually you don't need to even offer that much. This is within your realm of what you can do, and to be sort of put those boundaries on the work. But there's also an interesting, you're talking about like that, the balancing of, oh, it's this whole complicated situation, but it's really just an hour of my time, and how you actually look at the situation, and what ultimately, like I want to bring it back to, of course, it's the work is about caring for the patients, but I'm here to sort of bring it back to, well, how can you care for yourself as the caregiver, so that you can continue to do the work and not then hold on, have those residual feelings of guilt, maybe resentment, frustration, that then can go on to the next patient, or just, take that toll of burnout. Which the emotions, I mean, there's physical burnout, but the emotional is a huge, huge part of that.
I think Michael, just continue with what Alicia was saying, I definitely don't have as many and not to that intensity of what you've been going through. But there are they're speckled throughout my practice, and this one was a more recent one where it's affected my sleep, affected my social life, affected my personal life, my work life. Went on for a long time, like a couple of months, 3 months, kind of just dragging on. So it's kind of draining. Luckily, it didn't get to any legal issues or any complaints or anything like that. That really took a lot of steps to just prevent that from happening because I can see where it could go there. And I was like, oh, just kind of like steer it back, like just kind of like keep it going and then slowly pulling away from it instead of cutting it off, like slowly pulling away in a gentle way, kind of thing. But what Alicia was saying in terms of um, the having that support from people around you to say, yeah, oh no, you did the right thing. You don't have to feel guilty because what's guilt? It's a personal, psychosocial, spiritual feeling, but it's also a societal concept as well. So if society feels like you're in the right, the board thinks you're in the right, and your friends and everybody around, even the people around that person that might think you're in the right, it does take the stress off of you saying, okay, it's not me. It's it really is something outside of me. So you shouldn't take it on, right? So it's kind of it just takes the edge off of dealing with that. You can deal with your own psychospiritual emotional response, but having the society, having the people around you support you really does help a lot to another other aspect of it.
So maybe it's different in your practice. I don't know, like, but you must have patients that come to you that maybe can't afford your services, that you
Hmm.
feel really need your services, like that for sure. I know the type of patients that you see and the need that's out there, and I'm sure that's a thing. Like I know that's a part of it for me. And then there's also these patients that, and I'm not saying I'm like so unique or so special. I just find some of these patients, like, they have a hard time relating to regular dentistry in Toronto, and whether it's the sensitivity towards their sensitivities, whether it's the frequencies or the chemicals, or I think a part of it is also like the trauma that they've been through on their health journey. And then when they come to a practitioner, and I find either like it's like information overload, where they come with like a manuscript of issues and potentially an intolerance of reasonably discussing like the dental concerns or health concerns, because of the traumatic relationship they've had in the past with health practitioners, and so some of these pieces, like the financial piece, the traumatic piece, and just like the volume of health history, like I feel like a general dentist in Toronto isn't necessarily equipped
Hmm.
to navigate that or navigate it well. And I think just because of my experience with this patient population, like I kind of understand a little bit, maybe where they're coming from. And so I think I'm able to navigate it in a smoother way. Like I kind of know how to touch on the health history in a more efficient way. And I understand, like I understand, not to push with materials and how to test with materials, like those sort of ideas. Um, and then I also feel like sometimes if I'm rejecting the patient, or referring the patient on, like I'm not giving them that opportunity to get what they want, right? Like right now I have this lady, who, a patient, an old patient of yours, Aviad, who, is worried about her metal crowns. She wants her metal crowns replaced, and um she is sensitive to frequency. She's worried that it's impacting her health. She goes to another dentist, they're gonna be like they're not. And I don't know if they are, they're not. That's the truth,
Hmm.
right? I definitely have had patients where when we get the metal out, they, it's like one layer that's been removed, and it helps them, and sometimes it doesn't make a difference. But the back and forth and the number of canceled appointments and all of this, it's like,
Hmm.
it's not worth it. at some point. And so like I just said to her, like now I'm like, it's at the point, like if you want to come, like give a deposit, commit to it, and come for the crown. Cause like the amount of time that I put in, I could have done 6 crowns on somebody. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like diminishing return.
Yeah.
Um,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Alicia.
well, I just want to say briefly that I'm struck by what you said about like that those feelings around having to refer a patient on, and you said something about like that feeling like I'm not giving them the opportunity. I forget what the rest of it, like the opportunity to
Yeah.
heal, to get help, that I'm not, helping them. But I think it's really important to recognize that they're also not giving you the opportunity to help them. And so there are limits to your powers and your what you can control. And the patient is part of that relationship. And if they're not willing, if they're not, you know, receiving, if they're not making that process, they're not being willing to be taken care of in these ways that you're describing, while you can still have compassion and understanding for their situations that make that difficult, and possibly, there can be, mental illness in that equation at times, and personality, as well. It's really important to recognize that you are not, God who can control all in this situation. You can do what you can, but it's a relationship. It's working on both ends. And so if they're not also willing to receive, that's not on you.
I hear that. It's helpful for sure. It's hard in the moment to know like what the cutoff is, it's often like an emotional decision. It's not like my world, like if a patient needs if there's a cavity, it's like like there's a line, like if it's into the dentin I fill it, if it's in the enamel I watch it, like like it's relatively black and white. And I think like the conventional dental training, they definitely try to like, it's like system training, right? It's not really, I don't really like go with my gut. It's not like I'm going with instinct. It's, I try to fall back on, what are the parameters and like, what's the differential diagnosis? What are the reasoning behind it, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of like the didactic, medical mind that I try, and then when it comes to this stuff, it's a lot of emotion and it's hard to know, when you're doing too much, when you're not doing enough, like what's the line. It's easy to just say no, right? It's easy to just say, yeah, forget it, like I don't need to do that. So I don't know, for myself at least, like I don't know what the what's the when do you stop putting like putting yourself out, when do you say no, when is enough, how deep of a discount do you give, like all of those sort of ideas. It's tough.
And I think it's case by case. I don't think there's any real strategy or system. I mean, to some extent, but everything is flexible. Everything changes in life. Every situation is different. Um, like you were mentioning Michael earlier about comparing your experiences to mine, your practice to mine. So there's actually a big difference to what I can tell in terms of dealing with a lot of more definitely a lot more acute cases where people need care, they're in pain, there's stuff going on. There's some very clear things that need to be done that for you is very clear, whereas for me a lot of my job is kind of more passive in the background sometimes, like listening. Like I'll talk to them for an hour the first time, an hour and a half, and then another hour. So you're just waiting. You're talking to them back and forth, but you just want to do the job. You're like, let me do this job so I can get you healthy. Whereas me, talking is more than half of the job. So if I just sit there, let them talk for an hour, I can actually get a lot of emotional work done. I can actually calm them down. They feel like they're being listened to. I can offer them something that the other doctors are not, because they're turning them away within 5-10 minutes. So at the end of the hour or so, they're just actually calmer. Because I've already dealt with some of that issue, even just in that session, whereas you're still waiting to get the filling, get the work done so that they be get better. So, I might work for free and give them my time and talk. Okay, book another half hour. Okay, book another half hour, just to kind of talk to them, and that actually de-escalates things. And I can offer a very minimal, non-expensive treatment option that they can try, and they actually do feel listened to. And sometimes they do get better, and they maybe get better enough where they can start the full treatments if they can't. To sort of this back and forth, but it's definitely a different. Yeah, it's a different. It's same patient base, but a different situation. I do have some acute cases, of course, but a lot of it is mystery, like solving. Like people they don't know what's going on. They've seen 10 specialists. They're sick, but there's not like an emergency most of the time. But it's just trying to even figure it out. So that's definitely a different kind of emotional heightened state that you're dealing with than what I'm dealing with.
Right, no, that's fair. I mean, some of it's chronic, some of it's acute.
Mhm.
But it's still similar challenges for me, right?
Mhm.
Like in my world, it's really easy just to be, just to say, yeah, take an antibiotic and take some painkillers, and your issue will resolve in 24 hours, and then go deal with someone, go find someone to deal with it permanently, like more of the long-term solution. And I've always tried to stay, like, not practice in that way. Like I've tried to get to the, at least deal with like the dental source of the issue, as opposed to just, medicating it and putting a band-aid on it.
Mhm.
But there's also, the larger cases where people come and they need, quite a bit of work, and there is some treatment planning that goes into it at the beginning, and some hand holding, and then trying to, figure out how to get them out of their chronic situation and more into stable
Mhm.
baseline. But I think, something I'm going to take out of this, Alicia, is I think, like, I do need to create some sort of external support for myself, like a sounding board, someone that, understands, or I can, develop a rapport with, that will understand over time, kind of like where, what my challenges are, and to help me talk through where I think I'm at with each specific situation. Because I don't have a great internal barometer. I mean, I'm much better than I used to be. Like, I'm much better. You can get some experience. That's what I was relating to the experience earlier. Like, you get experience about
Mhm.
it. But, right now, like, I kind of feel like, no one would really understand like that, and that's not accurate. It's just, that's my feeling about it, right? Like, if I speak to another dentist about it, like, they don't really get it, unless I'm speaking to a dentist that deals with, patients with chronic illness. Like, it's a different type of patient relationship, and a different type of support that's required. And if you're not in that world, it's very hard to understand how it can be different. Like, I've had to train staff differently. So, my staff often get burnt out by it and get frustrated by it. Like, you need a certain personality, I think, as a staff member. Like, there's a little bit of,
Yeah.
extra TLC that's required, some humanity that's required. And for the right staff member, I think it's great. I think that it can help, to give a little bit of extra, motivation in the workplace. Like, it's not just like your standard boring stuff, but at the same time, like, if you don't care and you just kind of want to, like, clock in, clock out, and push your buttons, it doesn't always necessarily work.
Mhm.
Do you have one person who would get it? One other dentist who have a similar approach or understand?
I don't know.
You only need one.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No,
They
there's
don't
for
even
sure.
necessarily have to be a dentist, but someone who can say, and maybe it's worth, like, just trying to find one person who can be that sounding board. But I mean, you're both, certain personalities are drawn to this work and to specifically work with the populations you're working with, and both of you are clearly those kinds of personalities that are going to be very generous and giving. And so it's really valuable to have that sounding board, have someone else who can say, oh no, this is the point where you stop, like where you stop giving. And sometimes we need that when it is in our nature to go above and beyond. And to help us, that then helps having another voice saying, oh no, that's enough, stop here. You've done what you have to do, can help a lot with those feelings of guilt. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all just in our own heads. It becomes so much weightier and heavier of a burden.
Yeah, I think it's just you need to find a way to feel comfortable with like how much you've given, and and then you know you can always be open to give more. To not cutting anything off from your heart, you know, to people around you, but there comes a point where I've noticed it really does like it drains you, like it just like you're giving away of your own flesh, which you shouldn't after a certain point. Um, Especially like as Alicia said, it's not being reciprocated by the other person. Like it's that's not if it's two souls, two people meeting and they're trying to work together to make a deal. I'm gonna try to help you as much as I can, but I need you to be on the other side. But if they're not there, then yeah, it's kind of that's kind of like that is that's a good point, Alicia. Like that could be the cutoff point. Like if they're not there, then you can't be there. Like you just cannot take stuff from your own home, your own family, your own body, like metaphorically, and put it there. Like there just comes a point where even if you do that, it's not going to help. So now you just heard something from no gains for the other person as well. But you have to see that. It's just like in a metaphorical way of where the limitations for that person are, I guess, and what you can do. Maybe there is somebody that better that can help, and that's where I guess we refer out. But yeah.
The flip side to that is that sometimes then you extend yourself for someone and it makes all the difference in the world for them. And, that's a part of what is so rewarding about what we do.
Yeah.
Like you so graciously offered your services to that gentleman that we were talking about last week, and you're going to make a huge difference in his life.
Yeah, but
And
that's the hope, right? Like then that's the goal, that's the motivation.
right, so that's always like
Mhm.
the question, and you're right, Alicia. Like it's not to say that Avi and I are God or thinking that we're, but sometimes like there's something specific that we're able to do that can really improve the quality of someone's life. And like, just generally speaking, like I have this conversation with patients all the time. Like I kind of do what I do, and I have like a very relatively narrow focus of health. Like I'm a dentist. There's certain things that I focus on in dentistry, and for the right person, it can really change them. And for someone else, they can do the exact same thing and it has no impact on their health, and it's hard to know. Like I just saw a guy on Friday last week who was just telling me that he had his amalgams replaced by me, let's say 10 years ago or something. And within the first 6 months after that, he was able to shed 35 pounds because he was able to detoxify and lose weight. And the only thing he really changed was getting the fillings out and then doing a bit of a metal detox. And he just, his metabolism wasn't working well because of the toxicity. And not that what I did was so profound. I would credit him more than me, but it's that little change that can support someone. And it's great that we're able to do that, right? Someone that has electromagnetic sensitivities, and you take some metal out of their mouth, like it can be a game changer, right? Like all of a sudden the brain fog is lifted, there's clarity, there's an ability to focus. Like those chronic weights can sometimes be lifted and people can feel like they can function.
But
So
you can extend yourself beyond the Call of Duty or beyond what the average dentist would do. But you have to keep in mind, like, is the patient on the receiving end? Are their arms open to receive it? Are they making that are they accepting the help? And if they're not, I mean, you can there's a different question. There's the question of how much you extend yourself, but you also in that equation have to recognize how that offer, how that help is being received. And again, there's limits to what you can do if it's not being received. So I think that might be where, and it's not always clear, but that might be where you kind of take some of the focus away from yourself and look at, well, what is happening on the receiving end? And I'm curious, Aviat, if you have, it seems like you have developed a kind of healthy relationship to the emotional side of this process. And I'm curious, you had mentioned earlier about kind of like, what was the word that you used, but that you eased out of working with certain patients in a way that sounded like a kind of gentle, less fraught process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what happens for me, I spent a lot of my early life doing a lot of like spiritual meditation, retreats, just kind of working on myself and just kind of seeing, opening my heart, my energy to humanity, to people. A lot of that kind of stopped after a little while because I got so busy with school, like naturopathic medicine and work, but I still retain a lot of that emotional, I guess, kind of boundaries, and I'm trying to not let certain things in to find out that barrier. And then when I feel that something is crossing that barrier and my heart is open, like what Michael's doing, it's like you want to see another person get healthy, you want to see them change and grow and feel better. But there is something that once you pass a certain threshold and you feel like it's not actually going to happen, then you need to back away. But then you have to listen to that situation. You can't back away. I know some other doctors that I work with, or even people, they cut people off too quickly. They're just like, no, not working with that. And that's just a bad situation. That's just going to end up hurting the other person. It's going to end up causing new situations. It's going to create a foundation, a groundwork to fester some negativities, negative energy. And you don't want that. You want to have, it's just like an earth, it's like a swamp or land or something. You want to make sure that the terrain is nurturing. So if you cut something off, you've acted too fast, out of emotional, out of fear, out of anger, or whatever it is, and then you left something energetically in the background there, emotionally, it can feed on some negativity and grow something bad. So I've just kind of learned not to do that, not to pull away so fast, and just sort of do it in a way that I can pay attention to what the other person is saying, what they're doing, and just kind of nurture them through that process, because I realize, yeah, that's the cutoff point for me. Like that's it. Like I'm actually, if I'm not sleeping, if well, this is kind of really affecting me, I can't help other people, and I really see it's not even helping that other person, like it's very obvious. Then I'm just gonna have to start creating a new groundwork. Yeah, it's just I guess maybe that's why I've been avoiding situations. I didn't get to the point where I got for Michael. I think Michael's situations are more prone, like the kind of situation that he's dealing with. There's a lot of talking, a lot of emotional support that Michael's doing. And it is a mystery. He is seeing a lot of mysterious cases that other dentists don't want to look at. So that's why Michael's special. But at the same time, I don't have those. I don't have the same risk that he has. He has more risk in his profession with people, getting emotionally involved or going to the board and that kind of stuff. So I'm grateful for that. I don't want to have those situations. I know Michael's gone through a lot. So and then he's still going strong and he's still helping people even with all of this. So I only have a little bit of that experience, but I've learned, from that little bit. So hopefully if I ever get to that point, I know to make sure to prevent it from getting further into more trouble for myself or just emotional trouble for myself.
That sounds really valuable and helpful. And I wonder, Michael, if you think that learning how to set those emotional boundaries and recognize when they're being crossed is something that would be helpful for you and for others. And Aviad, maybe if you'd be willing, that could be something that you could share more about how to do that kind of work.
Like, is it how do you find those boundaries? How do you or recognize them?
Yeah. How do you learn to recognize them? How do you listen to your body and how it feels, and then where to go from there? And not necessarily right
Yeah,
now. I think maybe that could be something, if you'd be willing, we can possibly bring to a larger group, because I
for
think
sure.
it's really valuable. I'm curious, Michael, what you think.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd be totally open to it. It's something that it'd be interesting to, listen to, how other people deal with these circumstances and how they deal with the staff and, all of those pieces, right? I have a patient that's like near and dear to me, and she's also someone that's on and off the street, and I've known her for, gosh, like honestly, almost 15 years now. And we have, I would say, like a good relationship. And for better and for worse, I've become like a part of her support network. And she went through like a really bad episode uh, about 3 weeks ago, and she messaged me and it didn't sound good. And I like first just started with the texts and like, can you go to, she's in her 50s, so her parents are elderly and not that well. And I'm like, can you go to your mom? Like, no, like she's, all these things. And I actually like went at night and I picked her up and I took her to CAMH. And then she left CAMH on her own. And she messaged me again, and she really wasn't doing well. And she didn't want to go in because if you go in, then they take all your stuff. And yeah, I ended up picking her up, spending some time with her. She ended up spending that night like sleeping outside in a parking lot, like eating out of a dumpster. Like it's like heartbreaking. And so I picked her up the next morning and brought her to my office and just kind of let her sleep it off on the floor of my like private office in the back. And if you saw this person, you would see someone like she was covered in vomit, she stank, her clothes were all ripped, she had no shoes. She looked quite disheveled. But I know her, right? And so when she kind of like woke up, she needed to sleep. Like she really needed to sleep. And when she woke up, she kind of stepped out into the, main reception area, and my office manager almost had a heart attack. What is going on here? And I was like, listen, like, it's just a situation I'm trying to navigate. And I have no regrets about that. Like that's, like I feel fine with it. And she thanked me later. Like she ended up like going back to her home, like her halfway home, and staying there. Like she just kind of had like, one of these episodes. And um, like I feel like it's great to be able to, offer like a safe place and a warm place and all of that. It just kind of, and with her, like I trust her and I know her, and it's good. But if someone, let's say, like, knew who I didn't know, was in a similar situation, I would not extend myself in that way, right? And I would just try to, I'd kind of be more like formal about it, just, encourage them to go to CAMH or to reach out to their doctor, or to reach out to family members. Um, and and for better or for worse, like, not as allowing them to be as dependent on me.
The sad reality is that you can't help everyone, and that's something to accept, and might make it easier to not feel as much guilt, or to feel more comfortable in recognizing, like, let's say when you know encounter a new patient or someone who is being particularly difficult, and that it's unfortunate, but it's the reality is that you can't help everyone. And there are these amazing stories like the one you just shared of someone who you really did help and you've developed a relationship with, and there will be more of those stories. But it's very difficult and almost dangerous to be thinking of every potential patient as this potential person who you could have this transformative impact on, which, I mean, there will be many situations where that is true, but you can't know that with every case, and you can do what you can. But I think there's something important about recognizing the limitations, which are real, and
Yeah.
accepting them and being okay with that, as heartbreaking as it is.
Yes. I definitely hear that.
I'm aware it's 11:30. Don't want to keep you all too long, but are there any last thoughts or anything you want to share?
Well, yeah, Michael, thank you for sharing a lot of your experiences. It definitely opened up our eyes. I'm sure Alicia and I both are just like, wow, you've done so much, and you're given so much, and you've been hurt so much in that the same time. So wanted to thank you. You know, just acknowledge all you've done. And definitely, you know, keep it up, but don't get hurt too much. And a little scratch here and there is okay. We're supposed to be resilient. But yeah, hopefully we'll find that balance point where we can, you know, be masters of the ground that we walk on, and be able to hop from stone to stone and not fall and get hurt.
Mm-hmm. And it's also okay to fall apart. And that's why having spaces like this and having community of people you can talk to who can relate is so essential. Because like you're saying, I was just talking to someone about how in medical school, someone who was just applying for med school, and there was so much language in the application around like resilience, and it's this goal, and I'm hearing it a lot too in my work with medical students, and it's so important to build resilience, but there's also the danger in like that being the only option is to be resilient all of the time is not, it's not humanly possible, it's not healthy. So we need to be able to fall apart a little bit, and maybe that's also another whole other conversation, but to fall apart in a supportive with support, and then to, you know, like actually let out the emotions, because the work you're both doing, it's not just Michael, but Avia too, like
Oh, definitely
what
not.
you're doing is, both of you, is incredible and also so emotional, and as feeling people, there is so much that you're feeling and taking on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciate, I've learned a lot from hearing your stories, and I think you both have like so many stories and tools to share. And yeah, we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. How are you both feeling?
Good. I mean, it's good to share, you know, for sure. I feel like it's you know, there's more to explore. These sort of things always kind of leave with, you know, more to do than less to do. But I definitely think like for me, it's brought into my purview like the idea of you know, whether it's having like a group of practitioners to discuss these cases with on a regular basis to kind of get feedback and support, you know, just like share and have support about it, or, you know, speaking to someone about it, you know, individually. But I think that there's value in doing that for sure for me. Because sometimes when you're just doing it on your own, you get kind of lost in your own head about it, and it's hard to get the perspective.
Yeah, and like I think was it one of you mentioned balancing life. Like you're doing, you have all of these patients with all of these needs, all these demands, you have your own lives, and then you're going beyond outside the hours, the working hours to help these people. And so of course you're gonna feel like that, you know, I'm going back to what you said about feeling like you're on an island when you practice. The nature of just the demands of the work partly lead to that, but I think making space for that, which might not feel like you have that time, that hour, or that, even like that 10 minutes to call someone and be like, what do I do? Am I doing the right thing? But doing that would, I think, relieve a lot of the stress.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Aviad, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling yeah, pretty good. I'm happy we had this discussion. Puts a lot of things into perspective, and I brought up the topic. So it's you know, I can see how Michael's dealing with it, how I'm dealing with it, and it's good to hear that it's everyone that's kind of going above and beyond or dealing with a certain population base is kind of going through this, and yeah, nobody is alone. Puts it all into perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting, and you never know where the conversation is going to go.
Mhm.
That's to your point, Michael, about like feeling like, oh, there's a lot more to do. Just take a moment to recognize that you've, in the last hour or so, like it's already, I don't know where the time's gone. You've done a lot already. You figured out a lot. It might not feel like it, and I know we've opened up a lot of uh cages to to things here, and so that can feel overwhelming, but you've already done a lot, and I hope it's helped just to talk about it and to relate. You both, have similar and different experiences, but there's a lot of resonances. So not to feel overwhelmed, and hopefully to just like, let the conversation return to you and get absorbed, and it's already doing some of the work.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I look forward to continuing to explore this and continuing chatting and opening up different the different kind of areas of thought, and I think it'll be great as we bring in more folks with their own perspectives and to hear all of what else is going on. Like I think it's really nice to be able to do this. So I want to thank you too, Alicia, for giving us the time and the space to share for sure.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing how this tapestry gets formed and what kind of patterns and designs we can create with all these different people that we talk to.
Beautiful. We might need 2 hours. I mean, we can make it work in an hour.
So should we, before we get off, like should we kind of think about the next steps? Like are Mondays good? Should we try to do a Monday in October? Should we open this up to other folks? I think we were at one point like saying maybe offer like a different day to see if other people can come on a different day.
So I'm flexible. Mondays are my days off. I can do Saturday, Sundays as well, as long as it's planned ahead of time and I don't have any plans. Yeah, evenings are okay for me. I know evenings are not good for you, Michael, but like let's say like 7, 8 o'clock at night. If it's like once a month or something, I can put an hour here and there. So I'm flexible in those days. And then I think you should definitely bring in like people like Rena. I'm sure Rena's gonna have a lot to say. She's chatty in this department. Um, and then like maybe just bring in one or two at the most of the WEC members. Let them have like a platform where they can talk a bit more and sort of get their specific maybe topics or things that they're interested in talking about and be the focus of that particular session.
Okay. So I think it's great to bring someone else in. Happy to include Rena in the next one. Okay, so why don't we I'll send an email out to you guys, including her now, and see when she can do it. I would guess that for her, I think Monday's a clinic day for her. I think she's available Fridays.
Oh yeah, so actually work days are good for me as well. Like Tuesday to Friday. If I know in advance, I'll just book off like the 2 hours in work day and just talk from the office. That's actually probably the best option in a way because then I'm already there. I was in the office. It's not like after hours kind of thing. but that might not work for you, Michael.
That's a bit trickier for me. I mean, I could do like Friday at the end of the day. I don't know if like maybe like 3-ish or something like that. I don't know, Alicia, how that would work for you or for you, Aviad.
That could work for me.
Okay, so that's one option, maybe Friday 3 p.m. for an hour.
Or yeah, I mean, the next couple weekends are like they're all like Jewish holidays.
Well, it wouldn't be the next, it would probably be like
That's true, it'd be in
3 weeks.
October.
I'm going to Costa Rica next week
Oh, amazing.
for 2 weeks. So I'll be gone for, I'll be back for 3 weeks. So I won't be able to do it for at least a month.
Right, right. Oh, and Winnie's there now, right?
When he's there, she's living in the jungle. She's learning how to use, she's doing the permaculture course.
Oh, nice.
And she's telling me she's taught how to use a machete already. And like literally there's no internet there. I don't talk to her anymore because we can't communicate. She's like, no internet. There's like a little bit, a few text messages here and there. But she's learning a lot and she's really liking it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So why don't
So
we set an intention for like the 3rd week of October and let's see when Rena can do it. Have an idea of your guys' schedules. And go from there.
Sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay,
Great.
awesome, guys. Enjoy your bachelorhood while you have it for the future.
One more week. One more week of nobody around. Just kind of lounging around, you know?
Nice.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Don't forget to take those with those inhales, return to the moment.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Come on again.
Yes. Bye-bye.